Hello, it's Stuart, the Unrepentant Atheist, and I've got a clip here which has got a Christian coming onto the show and presenting an argument that he supposes that neither Matt or Tracy have ever heard before. So it's quite amusing to listen to, and some good things come out of it, so let's get going with it.
I did want to bring up the topic of creation with you guys. Sorry, this is kind of weird. It's like an echo with my TV.
Yeah, turn the TV down. It'll make it easier.
Okay. I just wanted to give you guys something to think about here. Let's suppose you were walking down like a path, like in a creek. You're in the woods or something, and you come across a watch.
Time out. Time out. This.
That's funny, isn't it? I mean, we've got two seasoned atheists here, two sort of almost professional atheists, and somebody calls in supposing that they've never heard the Watchmaker argument before. That's priceless.
This is the Watchmaker argument, and it's exactly what I talked about at the beginning of the show, only Ray Comfort comes up with painter and painting, and he tries to disguise it. Basically, the argument is if you find this watch lying on a beach, you instantly recognize, because of its complexity and sense of purpose, that it was in fact intelligently designed. That's exactly where you're going, correct? Okay. That argument has been demonstrated to be so horribly flawed, and yet I understand completely why it's presented, because it seems so reasonable. The reason why you recognize the watch is designed has nothing to do with how complex it is, how ordered it is, or any perceived sense of purpose. It's because you already know the watch is designed. You have a million examples of watches being designed, and none of them occurring naturally. And the occurring naturally is the key element. Humans occur naturally. Animals occur naturally. Rocks occur naturally. Buildings and watches don't. Now, some people have lodged certain objections to that.
Yeah, well, I suppose what you could say to that is that obviously, yeah, the whole point of the watchmaker analogy is that you can see purpose and you can see design through complexity, etc. And as for things occurring naturally, I guess that a creationist would say that in terms of human beings and organisms and the whole of nature, really, nothing, strictly speaking, kind of occurred naturally, that it was all designed by God, and that the watchmaker analogy holds true. So saying things that occur naturally is not necessarily going to convince somebody who uses that argument that it's a valid critique. Things that occur naturally contrast with things that don't occur naturally, because but Matt's, I think, now going to move on to the essential critique, and we'll hear that in a moment.
But I'd like to say that if you draw your analogy, your watchmaker analogy, out to its logical conclusion, that there is a God and he created the universe and everything in it. Then in reality, he also created the grains of sand on that beach, and therefore you are walking along a beach full of watches next to an ocean full of watches and a stream and a tree made of watches, and you're reaching down and picking up one watch and saying, this watch is so vastly different from the millions and trillions of other watches that are surrounding me that it is therefore proof of a designer.
Yeah, well, this is the part of the critique which I really like a lot, that everything is designed right down to the atom level, atomic level. And it makes no sense at all, if everything's designed, to pick up one thing and say, oh, look, this is designed. I absolutely love that. That really, for me, nails the critique on the watchmaker argument.
It is a self-reinforcing argument. You're inventing a claim based on, as I talked about earlier in the show, which you might have missed, we recognize the design because we've scaffolded ourselves up to the point where we can identify that this is actually the case, that this is actually designed. We don't get to put the designed label on it until we're certain that it is.
Well, I think you guys are missing the point of the analogy. I mean, let's bring this up. Let's say you were walking down that same path and you see an eye laying on the ground.
And how is that different?
Well, it's not different. That's the point. You see an...
Yeah, well, obviously, if you see an eye on a path, you'll recognize, presumably, that it is an eye from an organism, from a being that's either living or no longer living. And you've still then got the same question. Did it occur naturally through evolutionary processes? Was it created and designed, or what? And we haven't got any evidence for a designer. And if everything is designed, in other words, the blades of grass on that same path where you found the eyeball and also where you might find a watch, then you've got no point of reference to draw that conclusion that there is actually a designer of the eyeball in the same way that there's a designer of a watch.
An eye laying on the ground, and you instantly recognize, oh, that's an eye. It is made for the purpose of seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Just switching the watch to the eye doesn't do anything to discount what I just said.
Well, I'm not trying to make a difference. I'm trying to draw the similarity between the two. You recognize that both of them are made.
I've already granted you that there's no difference in your argument whether you put a watch on the beach or an eyeball on the beach. I'll grant you there's no difference.
Uh-huh.
My rebuttal stands. I mean, how is it you think this is an argument for design? Because when you look around at humans, for example, you may see things that you identify as design or purpose. But in reality, the distinction, as I pointed out, is that humans occur naturally and watches don't.
Yeah, the other point about the eyeball is to pick it up and say it's designed for sight. No, it's not. Because an eyeball, unless it's attached to the optic nerve and to the brain, is completely and utterly useless.
Okay. The main point of the analogy, I'm not trying to say that humans and watches are one and the same. I'm just trying to bring across the point that you recognize that the watch was made for a purpose.
No, you don't. You didn't listen to what I said.
Both.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you guys. I just wanted to bring up this topic just to see what you guys thought about it. I'm sorry I didn't at the beginning of the show hear what you guys.
Yeah, because he's assuming. I mean, every time he opens his mouth and talks about the eyeball or human being, he's already assuming that there's a designer. He's already assuming that the conclusion of his argument is correct, and that's why he keeps coming back to it. He's not actually demonstrated that there is a designer, and that the eye or a human being or a biological organism could not have occurred by purely natural processes.
You guys had to say.
That's all right. I think if there's plenty of answers online to this, and many of them are going to be better than mine. But what you're basically,
I still hold to what I say, and I still believe that everything I still believe. But I just feel like a lot of people in the atheist community are. I'm not trying to offend you guys or anything, but
you will
look at yourselves and ask yourselves: are we relying on science too much? Are we being arrogant?
That's absolute and utter. That's an absolute and utter nonsense. You're trying to denigrate science in order to bolster faith.
No. That's the thing.
Hang on. You are believing in something without any rational evidence, without any good reason to do so, and yet, in order to prop that up, you're willing to say, aren't you relying on science a little too much? In order to say you're relying on science a little too much, you first need to demonstrate that there is some better way of knowing. That's what this is all about, is a way to figure out and understand reality. And so far, science, the scientific method, the building of scientific models, has been the single most consistent, reliable method for discerning the difference between fact and fiction that we've ever come across. Nobody's suggested a possible better way to find the truth. All people do is hypothesize and claim divine revelation, personal experience, blind faith. These aren't ways to the truth. These are trappings. These are ways to believe what you want to believe. And until you can demonstrate that there's some better way of determining reality from non-reality than science, then your argument or your claim that maybe we're relying on science too much is patently absurd. And it's only made in order to bolster up the idea that you're not completely silly for relying on things for pure faith reasons. And in fact, you are. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, although it will be, and it's fair, because, you know, you kind of did the same thing a second ago. I'm just saying that believe things for good reasons. Care about whether or not your beliefs are most likely true, more probably true. If you base, is there anything that's more probably...
Okay, I think we get the point. Don't want to go into too much. Matt's going into sort of preaching mode there. We've obviously heard a lot of that. Yeah, but this I've come across this quite a few times with religious people saying to me, or even New Agers and people like that, saying, "Oh, you're relying on science too much. You know, why don't you listen to your intuition, listen to your body, listen to what your body's telling you. You know, you don't need to take all these medicines, and you don't need to go to the doctor. You can, if you listen to your body, and if you go back to nature, all the cures are out there." So you don't have to rely on medical care, you don't have to rely on science. And this is a really strange argument, because these same people, they're traveling, they're getting into cars, they're going on aeroplanes, you know, they're, I mean, everything around them, all the technology, all the food technology, all the food that they buy, if it wasn't for the rigorous and effective nature of science, it would actually be very difficult to live in the modern world. We would then have to go back to living in nature like we did hundreds, thousands of years ago, and we'd all be dying off at, like, 25 years old, if we were lucky to make it into adulthood. So another completely ridiculous statement by a theist, but you know as well as I do, that's enough from me. Leave some comments if you want on the Watchmaker. What did you think of that? Have you got anything to add about it? And also the statement that he made there, that we're relying on too much science. Thanks for watching. I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye for now.